Hey everybody, this is Brandon Scott, and welcome to the Fandom Pastor. If you've joined us before, welcome. If this is your first time, so glad you could join us. Do me a favor, if you would, share this out, give me a like, and give me a comment, whatever it is. Just let me know you're out there. So this week, we continue our series we started last time, a new series on the Kaiju. Now, Kaiju is the Japanese genre of giant monsters. We're specifically focusing on the films produced by the Toho Company. Special thanks to Pastor Zachary over at Jasonville UMC for helping me write this series. He's way more an expert on these films than I am. I enjoy them, but he is the expert. So if you were with us last time, you heard the clue. I always give a clue at the end of the episode on what we'll be discussing next. And my clue was Raymond Burr was famously in this film. Now, if you can tell by my little co-host here, the character we're going to be talking about tonight, or today, is Godzilla. Now, important to point out, and Zachary even told me this, when he watched the last film, and I knew it, or the last video, and I knew it, but Raymond Burr was actually not in the original version of Godzilla. The reason being, it was a Japanese film. Raymond Burr would not have been in that film. Raymond Burr was a famous American actor, was on television as a character of Perry Mason, who was a lawyer. Now, in the film Godzilla, he was a reporter. Now, what had happened was the film was brought over to the United States. They needed to dub in English, first of all, and then to expand on the story, to flesh it out in a way, they decided to add some cutscenes of Raymond Burr in it to help further explain the story for the American audiences. Great film. This was my first introduction to Godzilla as a kid. Obviously, I don't remember when it first came out because it came out in the 50s, but that was my first introduction to Godzilla. I loved Godzilla. Not my favorite kaiju. Some of you know who my favorite is. We won't talk about that character. We'll be doing another episode on it. But a wonderful character. And in fact, I always did enjoy Godzilla, but I will tell you one of my favorite versions of it, favorite films from when I was a kid, was not the 1950 version, but Godzilla 1985. I had it on VHS. I loved it. I watched it over and over and over again. I just always enjoyed it. And so Godzilla was... he was the first big monster, I think, that we can all recognize. Many of us, whether or not we watch those films, we know who Godzilla is. There's no question that he's famous. You know Godzilla. They have brought out a couple of movies here recently. We had Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which was a great film. Then prior to that, we had Godzilla, which is another great film. And Toho has a plethora of Godzilla films. If you haven't got a chance, check them out. They're really, really good. So what I want to talk about today is, so my understanding is Godzilla was created as a commentary on the use of atomic weapons. These weapons of mass destruction that were being created by the United States and other countries. And of course, the Japanese people knew firsthand the level of destruction that these weapons could produce. And so they were very fearful, as the rest of the world was. And so this was their way of bringing it to the forefront to show people how horrible this really was. The mindless death and destruction that was brought about by Godzilla, which he was created by radiation. And so this was their way of talking about him. Now, if you remember or seen any of the Godzilla films, you know he is all about, let's go into town and destroy. Let's cause destruction. That's what he does. That's what he does. That's what his character does. And what's interesting is, even when he's the good guy, he causes destruction. He destroys entire cities. Not Godzilla, King of the Monsters, but Godzilla, the second most recent Godzilla film that's been released in the United States, big screens and everything. He fought the Mutos. He was the good guy, and yet look at his path of destruction. And so what we look at is, even with our best of intentions, if we don't have proper guidance, if we don't have proper control, our good intentions can cause damage, can cause destruction. I'm reminded of the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. We may have the best of intentions, but if we don't have the proper guidance, guidance by God, guidance by the Holy Spirit, we will cause destruction. We will cause damage. It makes me think of now as churches are slowly coming back into in-person worship, where we see all of the problems that could happen if we're not careful. In fact, we've seen churches that refused to give up in-person worship, and they're being closed down because of the mass spread of the disease, of this virus. And so we have to do it, whatever we're doing, with the right guidance. Not the best of intentions. Intentions are good, but intentions are not the most important piece. Matthew 7:13 through 14 says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Again, we can have the best of intentions, but if we are not entering in the right gate, the gate through which we seek God, we will bring about destruction. We will be the Godzilla in the situation. Maybe the best of intentions, but we will have a path of destruction. So we have to be careful. We have to be purposeful. We have to be in the right mindset and footsteps of God. So think about that as you move through life. Are you Godzilla? It's entirely possible you are. And you're causing more issues than you are helping. So, join me in a couple weeks as we continue our series on Kaiju. Here's the clue for next time. This character debuts by masquerading as another character. So thanks, and God bless.